If you teach dyslexic children, you're probably familiar with the name Percy. In 1896, a bright British lad named Percy made it into the medical literature because his puzzling congenital word blindness kept him from learning to read, although he was highly intelligent and expertly taught.
Over 100 years later, fiction writer Rick Riordan spotlighted another bright Percy who struggled with dyslexia and ADHD in his action novel, The Lightning Thief, a tale of a young boy's discovery of his half-blood relationship to the Olympian gods. Mr. Riordan originally thought up his tale to encourage his second-grade dyslexic son, and his story is an important addition to adolescent literature, specifically action literature for the reluctant reader.
When we first meet our hero in The Lightning Thief, Percy Jackson is 12 and failing 6th grade at Yancey Academy, a private school for troubled kids in upstate New York. If you teach a dyslexic child, or are dyslexic yourself, pay attention to Rick Riordan's novel. Percy Jackson is not just a struggling reader and speller. He possesses exceptional reasoning strengths.
In order to understand just how gifted Percy Jackson is, listen to this special feature, a conversation between these two Seattle neuroscientists, Brock and Finette, and this young demigod, Percy Jackson, son of the Greek sea god, Poseidon.
In our conversation with Percy, we will help him understand how his dyslexic brain processing has enabled him to think in exceptional ways. In our book The Dyslexic Advantage, we have identified 4 strengths that often accompany dyslexic processing.
Our acronym MIND stands for 4 reasoning strengths: material, interconnected, narrative, and dynamic. Percy Jackson, as it turns out, is an excellent example of the N&D strengths, narrative and dynamic reasoning. But he also has one exceptional I strength, or interconnected reasoning.
Hi, Percy. We say in our book The Dyslexic Advantage that every dyslexic is a hero on a perilous but promising quest.
That pretty much sums up my adventures in The Lightning Thief, Dr. Hyde.
Although your dyslexic processing style greatly hinders your ability to read and spell, there's a flip side to those difficulties, several related reasoning skills that can only be called advantages.
That's right. The dyslexic processing style is much more than phonologic weakness. Schools and teachers often primarily focus on the things that dyslexics have trouble learning: how to read, how to spell, how to write, and miss the vast abilities the dyslexic mind offers. Percy, you have so many of those strengths.
The first teacher who believed in me was my Latin teacher, Mr. Brunner, who I found out later at Camp Half-Blood was really Chiron, a centaur.
And Mr. Brunner gave you something very important while you were still at Yancey Academy.
Riptide.
This powerful sword is unsheathed whenever you uncap your ballpoint pen. It becomes a weapon you can wield with skill and can never lose.
That's how I could disintegrate my pre-algebra teacher, Mrs. Dodds, and all those monsters on my quest, though they didn't stay dead.
Riptide is the accommodation your Latin teacher gave you. Not only did he believe in you and expect great things from you, he gave you a way to slay the monster dyslexia. Your pen that turns into a sword doesn't have to be a fantasy if you take advantage of the many keyboarding and word processing technologies available today to help a dyslexic person write.
That's encouraging, but at this stage of my life I'd rather just use it to slay monsters.
Here are the strengths we see in you, Percy, mostly an N&D but also one I strength.
Dyslexics have I strengths which enable them to search carefully for gist and context in all areas of life and find secrets that have been hidden in plain sight. They try to connect.
I did that all the time to spot the monsters I met on my quest. Like Krusty, who was really Procrustes, another son of Poseidon who tried to kill Theseus with excess hospitality on his way to Athens. I had learned about all these Greek legends in my Latin class, and I connected them to the strange situations and weird characters I ran across on my quest. Krusty sold waterbeds and cut and stretched.
You were setting your knowledge of Greek mythology into the context of your immediate experience, and that helped you problem solve your difficulties.
But your greatest strength is your episodic or personal memory. This is an end strength. You have a profoundly narrative character to your reasoning and memory. The problem-solving that goes on in your mind is functioning to restage your memories. Let's look at a few of them.
I kept on having this memory of my father's smile.
Yes, your mother told you that your father had left before you were born, but you had a hard time squaring that fact with what you remembered about your father, just a snatch of his smile and a warm glow.
When I saw my dad at Olympus, that memory helped me know for sure he was my father. My memories of a warm glow and my father's hand on my forehead as an infant both pointed to my dad, Poseidon.
Can you think of another time you used this in strength?
When I jumped off the arch into the Mississippi, I heard a voice in the river that sounded like my mother's.
But it wasn't.
No, it was a sea woman. Later I met her again in the Pacific. She was a sceneride, one of many who had watched me over the early years of my life. I have so many memories of the faces in the waves off Montauk Beach when I was a little boy, reflections of smiling women. The nereid in the Pacific told me I had gifts I had only begun to know, but in the Mississippi she said not to trust the gifts. I was confused by that. I wasn't sure how what she said fit in with the oracle's prophecy about my quest.
But eventually you figured all that out. Closely related to your episodic memory is your process of reaching insights, which is a characteristic D-strength. This process of insight is really your imagination at work. Here's how your stages of insight unfold.
You focus on a problem at hand and set out questions to be answered.
Like trying to figure out who that sea woman was and how her words fit with the oracle's prophecy.
Yes. You're ADHD, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that leaky attention is a strong characteristic of D-strength processing. In this second stage of reaching an insight, the relaxation phase, your brain loses focus and begins to wander. People often give this phase fancy names such as patient reflection or lyrical meditation, but it's just waiting for distant and novel associations and connections
to jump out at you.
Eureka! The insight comes in a flash.
So your strengths of interconnected, narrative, and dynamic reasoning are closely related mental skills. They help you see patterns in advance, a characteristic D-strength.
Each time the Fury appeared, I recognized her in a flash, and I got better and better at anticipating when she'd show up. I couldn't have successfully finished the quest without those 3 reasoning strengths. Thanks for clarifying them for me. They'll come in handy on my quests in the Sea of Monsters, the Titan's Curse, the Battle of the Labyrinth, and the Last Olympian.
These 2 neuroscientists, Brock and Finetide, agree that literacy, access to literature, is power. Percy Jackson and the Olympians series plays an important role in empowering literacy. Because Percy is a hero, he can boost a dyslexic child's self-esteem and interest in school. The series itself is full of important, engaging information about mythology, and as these experts say, individuals with dyslexia learn best when their interest is engaged.
Plus, Rick Riordan's writing style is not as complicated as Henry James's, and his series is just the kind of fiction dyslexic readers enjoy since all the novels in the series have the same characters, settings, and activities and often use similar words.
Finette and I assert that The Lightning Thief has power precisely because it allows us to look at Percy Jackson through the lens of the dyslexic advantages. In that way the novel helps to broaden the common yet confining weakness-based definition of dyslexia.